Hello all, welcome. My name is Tyler Espino. I am an OMP compliance analyst here with TechSRE, and today we'll be talking about compliance monitoring again here at TechSRE. Before we get started, here is TechSRE's antitrust admonition. If you have any questions regarding it, please contact TechSRE's general counsel. Beginning with TechSRE's mission, which is closely intertwined with NERC's mission, which is, to put it simply, as regulators and industry experts, we are dedicated to ensuring that the lights stay on and supporting the reliability of the power grid. What role does compliance monitoring have? Compliance monitoring plays a crucial role for this mission by supporting the owners, operators, and users of the bulk power system. This occurs by supporting entities in strengthening their operations and planning, cybersecurity, and overall compliance programs. So here we're going to talk a little bit about the approach and the setup. So the 6 regional entities are all under NERC, TechSRE, NPCC, RF, WEC, MRO, and CERC. Altogether, these 6 regional entities and NERC form the Electric Reliability Organization, the ERO, and work towards a highly reliable and secure bulk power system. There is a presentation named History and Introduction to TechSRE by our Deputy General Counsel, Paul Curtis, which provides additional information if you are interested in learning more about the creation and makeup of the ERO. So to achieve this collective goal, we begin by remaining independent and objective on our end as the Compliance Enforcement Authority, also known as the CEA. We continuously seek top talent and expertise and strive for retention and the growth of this talent. We also collaborate with industry and industry experts, you all, through engagements, but also through various forms of outreach. And finally, the ERO Enterprise has been on the move towards an innovative and risk-based program, which we will get into a little later in the presentation. And again, all of this feeds into the common goal for a highly reliable and bulk power system. Next here, we're going to discuss what rules we use and follow when providing and fulfilling compliance monitoring activities. So beginning with the rules of procedure, also known as the ROP, these rules apply to NERC members, the regional entities, as well as owners, users, and operators of the bulk power system. The ROP governs what processes we as the regional entities must complete and what rules you all as entities must follow. This includes definitions, but also activities related to the reliability standards, development process, registration and certification, compliance monitoring and enforcement, and much more. Then we have the NERC reliability standards. These are designed to ensure the reliable operation and planning of the bulk electric system, the BESS. And while there are 14 standard families, we often divide them into 2 categories: those related to operations and planning, O&P, and those on critical infrastructure protection, CIP. There are nearly 100 NERC standards, and the applicability of these largely depend on the functions entities are registered as. You all can find these via the NERC website. The website also has the one-stop shop tool, which includes additional information and resources such as effective dates and implementation plans. So you all can find that again on the NERC website. And finally, we have the ERO Enterprise Compliance Monitoring and Enforcement Implementation Plan, also known as the CMEP-IP. This is something that is produced every year, and within this plan, there are various focus areas and risk elements that speak to the larger risks that must be prioritized for oversight of registered entities. Entities can use this CMEP-IP to help ensure their compliance programs are well equipped to address and mitigate these trending risks. I'm sure most of you are well familiarized with these, but we've included the links to these resources for your convenience. So compliance at TechSRE is made up of 3 departments, beginning with risk assessments. This group is focused on determining what poses the biggest risks to the bulk power system, and they do this by completing the entity's inherent risk assessment, IRA, and compliant oversight plan, the COP, which we'll expand on the next slide. Risk then collaborates with compliance management and the engagement team lead to determine the appropriate scope for the engagement and provide risk-based sampling recommendations to the engagement team. So moving on to the next department, which is the Operations and Planning Compliance Department, also known as OMP, which I am a part of as an OMP compliance analyst. This group is responsible for taking the lead on auditing and providing outreach related to the OMP specific NERC standards. And finally, we have the Critical Infrastructure Protection Compliance Monitoring Department, CIP. This group is responsible for taking the lead on auditing and providing outreach related to the CIP specific NERC standards. So these three departments come together and make up our Compliance Assessments Department. So we strongly encourage entities to be proactive. And so if you all have any questions that we can help answer, please don't hesitate on reaching out as new NERC standards are introduced or existing ones are updated and you all are working on implementing new processes. Some questions may come up related to best practices, internal controls, or how to improve existing processes and procedures. We can help answer these questions. A collaboration and the asking of these questions doesn't only have to take place during engagements. So for a while now, the ERO has been moving towards performing CMEP activities using a risk-based approach. TexRE in unison, again with the ERO, follows the ERO Enterprise Risk-Based Compliance Oversight Framework, also known as Framework, approach by focusing on identifying, prioritizing, and addressing risks to the bulk power system. Here, I've included a figure that shows the risk-based compliance monitoring process flow. So the framework examines inherent risk, which considers factors such as assets, geography, interconnectivity, and other factors unique to the registered entity. Operational risk or entity performance is also included. It also examines ERO Enterprise BPS residual risks, which is information produced and shared via the CMEP IP every year. The final product leaves us with the entity's compliance oversight plan, the COP, which consists of the oversight strategy for a registered entity. This identifies the regional entity's planned compliance monitoring scope for the entity, the planned use of associated compliance monitoring tools, the monitoring period, and the interval of monitoring. As reliability risk is the same for all registered entities, is not the same for all registered entities, the framework enables each regional entity to direct resources where they are most needed and most effective, along with helping determine what type of CMEP tools to utilize for any given engagement. So tools for assessing compliance. There are several tools for assessing compliance. Some are utilized more often than others. You all may be more familiar with compliance audits and self-certifications. Compliance audits are larger in scope and offer a more comprehensive review. Self-certifications usually have a more focused scope. Regarding self-certifications, TexRE would previously conduct these as mini compliance audits, but now we are moving towards performing these reviews at a higher level while still achieving reasonable assurance. Then we have spot checks, which are equivalent of a limited scope compliance audit. The notification requirements to an entity are less strict than those of a compliance audit. Depending on the need for the spot check, the CMEP IP and identified focus areas can help determine the scope for these spot checks. Then we have periodic submittals involving situations where the NERC reliability standards and requirements require registered entities to periodically submit specific data within specific timeframes to the compliant enforcement authority, being TexRE. For example, some registered entities must submit sustained outage data on a quarterly basis. And this is also how entities communicate and submit attestations when they claim non-applicability to certain standards, such as FACT 3 and PRC 23. Then we have complaints and compliance investigations, which are not as commonly utilized, but they remain as other types of tools that regulators can use to conduct CMEP activities. And finally, there are self-identifications. These are a bit different and are when entities themselves identify a potential issue. These potential issues may be identified during the normal operations of your program and are also known as self-reports. Entities self-report to TextRE enforcement. As stated before, we'd rather have entities take the proactive approach by having internal controls in place to identify potential issues instead of having these potential issues come up during a compliance audit or some other type of engagement. We strongly encourage entities to self-identify. This process also usually provides incentives where if the potential issues turn out to be a violation of some sort, entities may receive some credit for having self-identified. So here we are going to talk about the engagement process for compliance audits at TextRE. So the first step that we are seeing here is a handover call with the entity's primary compliance audit, the PCC, TextRE risk engineer or analyst assigned to the engagement, and then of course the engagement team lead. So shortly after that, the audit notification letter will be sent to the PCC 120 days out from the tabletop review, and this A&L will be sent through Align. From there, the entity is given 30 days to submit its initial evidence via the Secure Evidence Locker, the SEL. And this is, again, 90 days out from the tabletop review, considering those 30 days that you all have. Once the compliance audit team receives this initial evidence, we begin our review process. Normally, a request for information, RFI schedule is set in place and communicated to the entity where we will ask additional questions, again, via Align. Normally there is a 1 week turnaround, but these RFI schedules are put in place with the understanding that they are flexible. If there is something that we cannot clarify via RFIs, the compliance audit team will request a subject matter expert call to allow for a more in-depth discussion. Then after this, we have the tabletop review, which is usually a week long. This is where we may meet internally as a group to collectively review the evidence and discuss any potential issues that may result in preliminary findings. We then provide an end-of-day update to the entities each day to include, again, the compliance audit team's determination of any preliminary findings or lack thereof. During this week and the next, if there is a need to send any RFIs, the turnaround for these RFIs are 24 hours. So following that, if there is an on-site component or need, this would occur during the second week. During the on-site, we'd conduct any walkthroughs deemed appropriate by the compliance audit. This would be coordinated in advance with the PCC and could involve cold weather and extreme weather preparedness walkthroughs related to EOP 11 and EOP 12, for example, substation visits related to facility ratings and FAC 5, and cyber and physical security walkthroughs of control centers and more related to the many other SIP standards. If there is no need for an on-site component, then we would use this time to have any additional interviews and discussions as needed and if needed. Now moving on to the last few. So if there are any preliminary findings during the tabletop review, we'd present a summary briefing to the entity communicating these. Following that summary briefing, there will be an internal findings review team, an FRT meeting, which involved the compliance audit team, compliance and enforcement management. During this meeting, the compliance audit team presents these preliminary findings to management, to which a final determination is agreed upon. This allows for a standardized approach to how TextRE makes these determinations while aiming for consistency. Following the FRT, the compliance audit would then present the exit briefing to the entity, which would include the final disposition of the preliminary findings. During the exit briefing, the TextRE enforcement joins in, and it is almost like another handoff call where the entity will begin working with TextRE enforcement on any potential non-compliances given. So going back again, if there are no preliminary findings, then the compliance audit team would then bypass the summary briefing and then deliver the exit briefing. So there are three major phases when conducting engagements: the planning, the fieldwork, and the reporting phase. For the fieldwork phase, a key objective of audits is to obtain reasonable assurance that the evidence collected and assessed is sufficient and appropriate to support your findings and conclusions in relation to the audit objectives. Here we see that sufficiency speaks to the quantity of evidence, and appropriateness speaks to the quality of the evidence received. Thus, the sufficiency and the appropriateness of evidence needed and the testing of that evidence will vary based on the audit objectives, findings, and conclusions. This is to say, we are not looking for absolute assurance. You may already know that the overall goal of every compliance audit and engagement is to gain reasonable assurance and that the registered entity has no instances of potential noncompliance. So again, the compliance audit team will collectively use professional judgment to determine if there is reasonable assurance regarding your findings and conclusions. So these are some standards that had discoveries recently. So here we noted that there was an overlap between the standards and those included in the recent CMIP IP. So all but two of these standards you all can see have an asterisk next to them. So the asterisk signifies that the standards again that have the asterisk were included in the CMIP IP. So using the CMIP IP again and what the ERO gathers annually, entities have the opportunity to familiarize themselves with it, the focus areas and the trending risks to the BPS. With this information, entities can ensure that their compliance programs remain resilient to extreme weather, for example, and all other risks posed to the bulk power system. So you will often hear us say the following: preliminary findings are often related to internal controls. So we say this at every opportunity. And so some of you may have heard this once, twice, or 10 times. And it is true. We strongly believe that. Beginning with documentation, in addition to the commonly understood meaning as information written or printed on paper, documentation can be any electronically stored information, including writings, drawings, graphs, charts, photographs, sound recordings, images, and other data or data compilations stored in any medium from which information can be obtained. So combined with internal controls, which are processes or steps implemented to prevent or detect issues and ensure operational efficiency and compliance. So these are two factors to consider when building or improving your compliance management program. And here are some things to consider. So at the very beginning, want to start with first thinking about reliability and security, which is the reason that we are all here. Then we want to identify objectives. This can be by looking at the purpose statement included for each NERC reliability standard, answering the why. Then identify the population. Then we can, which is to focus on the who. Who does this involve in effect? Identify roles and responsibilities for accountability and transparency purposes. Then we want to organize resources. So moving on to the what is needed to ensure the objective and work is completed. This can also be personnel or software, for example. And next we have plan ahead, which is to answer the when. Set a timeline focused on risk and meeting compliance expectations. Following that is to monitor performance and task completion. Once the setup is complete, add opportunities for check-ins, follow-ups, and adequate reporting. And finally, addressing any issues. Consider adding a lessons learned component to your programs. This will allow for continuous process improvement. So here we are going to talk about an internal controls example specifically focused on facility ratings and FAC 8. So here we have prioritizing consistency. So for example, we want to make sure that entities have facility ratings methodology, and that the facility ratings themselves and the documentation of the facility ratings are consistent and do not contradict one another. You want to ensure that these two communicate with each other and that the FRM does not contradict the facility ratings. Then we have periodic reviews. Ensure that the entity has internal controls intended to prompt a review of its facility ratings with an emphasis on risk management and a physical walkdown component. Consider implementing peer reviews. We often see that whenever entities implement a peer review component, it sets up for a more clear and stronger compliance program and less preliminary findings or instances of potential non-compliances. Then we have change management. What change management processes does the entity have in place? Ensure that if there are any change management processes, they are documented in the entity's procedures so that personnel may follow them appropriately. And record management, again, going back to the documentation part, ensure proper version history is documenting by establishing revision history tables to capture review and update details. So here we've included some information to consider including, such as dates, personnel name and titles, and a brief comment or description of the changes made. So this all going back to the documentation and internal controls and how these will work together to form and prove compliance and reasonable assurance within your compliance program. Okay. One more thing here. It should also be said that these internal controls are not one size fits all. There are several factors that play into the development and implementation of these internal controls, such as the entity size and makeup of the entity. So here we've provided some resources that may be beneficial to you all, beginning with our TechSRE website, which within itself contains multitudes of information, such as where this presentation will be housed and accessible to you all. Then we have a resource to the NERC Standards Review Forum, NSRF, and the Critical Infrastructure Protection Working Group. Following that, we have links to the TechSRE workshops, Talk with TechSRE, TechSRE board meetings, and NERC meetings. Here you will find information for any events and any coming up workshops related to any changes in standards, any updates, CMIP IPs, for example, that are coming to fruition. You can find this information there. And then Texas Review, I did purposely skip that one. This right here is the link to the Texas Review newsletter. Here you will be able to find the previous newsletters, but also the opportunity to subscribe to receive those newsletters via email. All right, and lastly here, we did provide a contact, which is compliance@techsre.org. So as previously stated, feel free to reach out if there are any questions, any doubts, if you as entities have any thing that you want to run by us and talk about best practices, or if there's anything that was, previously published and you want to talk about how you want to implement that within your organization, we'd be happy to meet and collaborate with you all to talk about that and give you some guidance related to the implementation of these new practices again. Feel free to reach out to us again at compliance@techsre.org. Thank you and have a great day.